So this video is a little bit of a tangent, but not really. It's gonna especially appeal to those of you who kind of like to geek out on technique, swing technique. I've been doing a lot of video work recently in my free videos about how big of a factor pronation is on serve technique. And pronation is the rotation of the forearm from inside to outside. It's a really big factor, and every player, I believe, if they want to hit their best possible serve, should be pronating, rotating their hand. It ends up being the hand, but it's really the forearm that's doing the motion from inside to outside. So if you've done a lot of detective work about pronation and you've seen many of my videos about it, you're probably wondering to yourself after the first two videos in this series, well, Ian, how in the world do I reliably get my strings facing my target if my strings are turning constantly as I pronate my forearm? I mean, the fact of the matter is, if I'm aiming for the tee and I pronate, my racket comes up on edge as it should, I make contact, and then my racket continues to rotate out to the side. If I do that, I mean, my strings are only really facing my target for like a split second, right? And the answer to that is yes, that is correct. The only way around that is to do the worst mistake, do the worst motion possible for your service motion. And that is to say to yourself, all right, well, I know I want to hit a serve at the tee, so why not just line my strings up at the tee, and I'm just going to keep them facing the tee the whole time. And that either ends up looking like this, and let's see if I can, there it is. Just literally line your strings up at the tee and then just push forwards. Or you'll see some variation of that where they'll go through a full motion, but it's this waiter tray take back, if you're familiar with that terminology, meaning the strings look like a waiter tray coming out with your meal with the plates on top. Some variation of the waiter tray position followed by just a push forward. There is no snap. When people refer to wrist snap, it's what they're really talking about is this pronation of the forearm. And so the racket head snaps as a result. It releases and turns very quickly at the very tail end of the motion. When you take that out of the equation and you instead decide to just push forward, you lose out on massive amounts of racket head speed. And that means less power, less spin, and therefore ultimately less control and less confidence in your service motion. So this video is just kind of a little aside to those of you about technique, specifically pointing out that yes, you should be pronating, and even as you're doing these little quick control drills, you know, I'm starting with my racket on edge and I'm coming up on edge towards the ball. It's not as aggressively as if I was doing my full motion, but it's starting on edge, I'm making contact, and then I'm turning out to the side, even as I'm going slow and relaxed. And don't do this mechanically or robotically and you know, try to micromanage every part of it. That's absolutely not what I'm prescribing here. I just wanted to do a quick side note and let you know, in case you're wondering, yes, you should be pronating, and yes, where the ball goes predominantly is determined by where the strings are facing. So that means that we've got just kind of a split second where our strings are in fact facing our target, which is why awareness is key, starting to become more aware of what the racket is doing up there. And the second part, which I talked about in the very first video, was repetition. Becoming more aware of what's happening and then getting the repetition, the practice reps in, so that we can in fact reliably predict where the racket is facing at contact and therefore where the ball is going to land in the box.